but we're going to start right now because we have a lot to cover. So we're very lucky that this class, I have some connections, so I got my class twice a week. So we're able to cover more ground. So this is Chumash, and in Chumash, we're going to start with the book of Beraishis, which is Genesis, the first book. And we're going to, we don't have that much time, but we're going to try to highlight different points. Today, we're going to work on the introduction and the beginning of Beraishis, and then we'll move on to the next topic already on Tuesday so that we can, cover different things. If you have any questions anytime throughout, please just, raise your hand and let me know, and I'll try to answer as much as I can. So the first thing, the book of Beraishis spans over 2,309 years. So just to give you some perspective of, where we're going, what's going on over here, so you can put it into place. There's 5 books. The first book is Beraishis, which is what we're doing now, which means in the beginning. Okay, that spanned over 2,000 years. The next one, Shemos, is 140 years. Vayikra, 1 month. Sefer Bamidbar, 38 years, almost 39. And Devorah, 67 days. So you see, it's very not proportionate. It's very unbalanced that we have the book of Beraishis is over 2,000 years, the span that it goes through. It talks about creation. In addition to talking about creation, it talks about the famous story of Noah and the ark, and it also discusses the life of our avos, our patriarchs, which is what we're going to go through over this, next couple months, different stories. And it goes all the way through the birth of the 12 tribes. And all the way until the Jews go to Egypt. So that's really when the Jewish people are created. This is the start of the Jewish people, because it's from when God created the world until, so we're talking about Adam, we're talking about Noah, we're talking all the way through Abraham, Yitzchok, Yaakov. We're going all the way through until Yaakov gives birth to the 12 tribes and goes into Egypt. At that point, we already moved to Shemos. So we are obviously not going to go through everything, but we're going to start, and we're going to cover as much as we can. So I'm just going to give a little introduction about the whole book, Sefer Beraishis, before we even get into or touch upon creation. And so this book is called Sefer HaYashar. Okay, Yashar means straight. This is the book of truth. That's really what it's saying. It's the book of truth. And because what are we mostly speaking about? As I said before, we're speaking about our patriarchs and our matriarchs. We're speaking about what we call the avos, which are our fathers, and the imahos, our mothers. And this is the truth. What they do is the truth. So we learn about it, and we're going to delve into different details, and we're going to try to scrape the surface because there's so much depth and we can't really understand everything. But we're going to scrape the surface and we're going to see. But one thing that's why I'm introducing it here. It's so important to have this premise before we get into this book, to understand that this is the book of straight. Straight means I know exactly where I'm going. Gray, I don't know, it's a little windy, there's a fork. Should I go here? Should I go there? No, this is the straight book, meaning it is the book of truth. So there's a lot of things that we're looking at, and we're going to say, how is this possible? This doesn't seem true to me, but that just means that we don't understand it well enough. And of course, I'm not going to just say we don't understand it. We're going to go into, different explanations in order to, come up with an understanding. But it's very important to have this premise to know that we don't see the whole picture, but these our patriarchs and our matriarchs, they are the truth, and what they do is the truth. And it says, Maise Avos Siman Labanim. Or for those of you that have more of a, speak Hebrew, Maise Avot Siman Labanim. The deed, the action of our forefathers is a lesson for us. Okay? So this, what we're essentially saying over here is...
Hello?
Hi. Okay, we're in the middle of the class. So if you could just mute yourselves, and then they'll be able to hear me, but we won't hear any background music. That would be excellent. So if you don't mind, Michael, if you could just mute them, that would be really helpful.
Yeah. Oh, you
have to mute it.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
The other participant, it'll be quiet. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So this book, but we'd love to see the video. We'd love to see your faces. So this book is the stories of our forefathers. This first book of Beraishis is talking about our forefathers. And it says, this is a sign for the children. We are the children. So this is not a history book where we're just flipping through history. Okay, that was interesting. These are lessons for me today, for you today, for all of us. How do we live our lives? And we're going to try to, bring that in the different classes so that we can see how we can learn and take this. And Torah is actually the root word of Torah in Hebrew. It means, it is lesson. It means to teach. So these are lessons that we are supposed to take, for us. So the very first word is, we said in Hebrew, it's called Beraishis. So the very first word Beraishis starts with a bays. Who could tell me what is, Sarah, you have a question? I saw a raise of a hand, but maybe that was by accident. Okay. So everybody, you can answer together. What is the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet? What is the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet?
Aleph.
Aleph. What is the second letter in the Hebrew alphabet?
Bet.
Bet. Now, what does the Torah start with? Beraishis. What does it start with?
Bet.
Bet. So there's this question that the commentaries ask, and they say, why? Why does the Torah start with a bays, with a bet, with the second letter, and not with the first letter? You would think, it doesn't have to, obviously, but that's the question that is asked. Why is the Torah starting with a bays and not with an aleph? And it says that when you're learning Torah, you have to realize that we cannot really understand the aleph. The aleph stands for Elokim. When you say a bracha, you say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu. Elokeinu means our God. So the aleph stands for God. And Hashem is starting off the Torah with the bays, saying, you have to know that you cannot really understand the aleph. you have to know there's something before what you're learning here. God is greater. You're not going to know everything about God. And so when you realize that I'm only starting from Bays, there's Aleph, there's God, which of course through the Torah we get to understand and we get to know, but we're not going to know all the depth of God. So you have to start off knowing that you are only starting at Bays. And the purpose of Torah is not science. It's a means to connect to Hashem. So Torah is secondary. Torah is a means to connect to Hashem. It's a means to connect to God. If you're learning Torah only as a science, as a matter of fact, in the time of the Greeks, that's what happened. The Greeks, they didn't mind in the story of Hanukkah. They said, you want to learn Torah for this as a science, as a history book, as information? Great. But you want to put God, you want to put holiness in it? We don't allow that. We don't want that. That's not what we want. But that's exactly what we want. That's what we learn. That is exactly the point, that the Torah is a means to connect to Hashem. If you do Torah without knowing that there's an Aleph, that there's a God before that, then you're missing, it's still, you're still learning Torah, but you're missing, the point. And it says, if we do it like that, we start with the Bays, but we know there's an Aleph before, then, and we do it to connect to God, we're starting with Bays, which stands for bracha. Bracha means blessing. So we're starting off with blessing. So, and if you know that there's a God that's higher than the Torah, then you will connect and reap all the benefits of the Torah. So Hashem used the Torah as a blueprint to create the world. Some people think, they say, oh, Torah has a remedy for everything. So what came first? So some people want to say, what came first? I got sick. I had a problem. I didn't know what to do in this problem. I had a business issue. And Torah, if I search in Torah, I'm going to find the answer. I'm going to find the answer. And we say, it wasn't my problem. And then Torah found a solution for it. Torah was there even before my problem. It says, Istakel be'oraisa bara alma. God looked in the Torah and then he created the world. So it's like the blueprint. Nothing in the house can be built without being in the blueprint first. And that's why the Torah is never outdated, ever. For anyone who came on a little bit later, I said I love to see cameras on. I totally understand if you don't want to, but if you're happy to do that, I'd love to see your faces. If not, no worries. So we use the Torah to navigate. It's like our map to navigate through the world. And this shows us how to go about. So for example, the mitzvah of honoring one's mother and father, kids are dependent on their parents so they can learn. We have to honor mother and father because in the beginning they needed them, right? If they didn't need them at all, goodbye, they're on their own. But at the beginning they need them. But why are kids dependent on parents? Because of this mitzvah. It's not, you see what I'm saying? There's two different ways of looking at it. Is it that I want to do the mitzvah, so because I have the mitzvah, I made kids dependent on their parents? Or is it the opposite, where kids are dependent on their parents because of this mitzvah? The mitzvah came first. For example, why did God make poor people in this world? Because we have a mitzvah of tzedakah, because we're supposed to give charity to other people. It's not, oh, there's poor people, so God made a mitzvah to give charity. No, first, God made the mitzvah, and then he made poor people so that we would be able to complete his mitzvah. So now we're going to look at the first pasuk in the Torah. I'm going to share screen so that we could see it. So if you see over here, it says, Beraishis, bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es haaretz. In the beginning, Hashem created the heavens and the earth. Okay? So on the one hand, I would love to teach you all about creation, but the Ramban, who's Nachmanides, he says that it's so deep and it's so complex that we really shouldn't even learn about it because it is such a deep and intense level. And it's impossible to really understand the concept of our Creator. So we're gonna touch upon two things on this topic, though. We're going to touch upon two things on this topic, but we're not going to go. We'll go in depth, but not that in depth. Okay. So in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So the most famous commentary, the most simple commentary, it says you cannot learn Torah without, you can't learn Torah without learning Rashi. Okay? So what is Rashi? Rashi is the commentary to explain us the simple meaning. So let's look at the first Rashi, which I have right here on the board. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to tell you the basic idea of it. And the basic idea is that it says that Reb Isaac, there's a question here. What is the question? The question is, why is God starting with this creation? Why doesn't he start with the first mitzvah? If the purpose of Torah is to do mitzvahs and to connect to Hashem, so then why don't you start with the first mitzvah? What's the first mitzvah? When the Jewish people became a nation and they left Egypt, it says their first mitzvah that they got was to bench the month. That look at the moon, and when the moon comes out, we bless the month, and we establish what is called Rosh Chodesh. So that's what he's asking over here. Reb Isaac says that the Torah, which is a law book of Israel, should have commenced with the verse that this month shall be unto you the first of months. That's the first commandment that was given to the Jewish people. So what's the reason that it commences with creation of the world? We already know about that. So what does Rashi give as an answer, which is the simple commentary? He says, because of this thought that the non-Jewish people are they might have a claim against the Jewish people, that the people might say to the Jewish people, you are robbers because you took by force the land of Canaan, the land of Israel. So the non-Jews are going to say to the Jews, how could you have stolen the land of Israel for you, for the Jewish people? And he says, so now because of this, the Jewish people are going to be able to reply right over here, that Israel may reply to them, all of the earth belongs to the Holy One, blessed be He. The whole earth belongs to God. He created it. That's what we're starting with. And guess what? When you create it and you own it, He decided to give it to who He pleased, which was the Jewish people. And He gave it to them. He willed it. He took it from them, and He gave it to the non-Jews. And then He decided to take it and to give it to the Jewish people. So he says, that's it. Okay, any questions on this before I continue? Okay. So this is a little confusing, actually. This is supposed to be very simple, but this is a little like, what's really going on here? What is God saying over here that we had? What's the non-Jewish people's complaint? Any nation can conquer an area and claim it, right? I mean, that seems to be okay. That seems to be a fine thing to do. So what are the non-Jews really saying? So, I mean, living in today's day and age, I guess you could look at this Rashi and say, wow, look how smart, God started with this, because who would have ever thought that everyone would be making such a fuss over this land of Israel? So smart that God set up this like preventative, to make sure that no one is fighting over Israel and the Jews could have their claim. But really this needs some introspection. We need to understand what's going on over here. Why are the non-Jews complaining? What would be their claim? Any nation is allowed to conquer a land and take it from a different nation. So what are the non-Jews really saying? They said, because really they could conquer it back. So, the Jews took it, and then if the non-Jews want it, they could make a war and take it back, which has happened many times. But the non-Jews are really saying that once you conquered it, once you conquered it, we cannot conquer it afterwards. Why? Why can't the non-Jews conquer it afterwards? They said because when the Jews conquered the land of Israel, they infused it with holiness. So now it's not just they conquered it and they live there. It is a holy place. It is a holy land. And now that it's infused with holiness, even when the Jewish people leave and they're exiled, and they're not in Israel, and they were exiled to Babylon, but still there's holiness that is there. And even when they're not there, it still really belongs to the Jewish people. And that's what Rashi's saying, that the non-Jews complain and they say, Bnei Yisrael stole the land. They changed the whole makeup of the land. It's not a regular land anymore that we could just conquer back. It's holy now. When you go to Israel, it's not just going to a place that happens to be the Jewish people. As a matter of fact, many years ago, we were offered Uganda. And did we take the offer? No. Why didn't we take that offer? Because it's about holiness. This is a land that's holy. It's not just about, this is a land that we could have for the Jewish people. So now that it's infused with this holiness, the non-Jews are saying that we can't conquer it. So that's why it's stealing. You took it that we can never get it back again because you infused it with so much holiness. And the Jews answer, they say, it's not fair. Why'd you put all this holiness into it that we can never take Israel again? And what do the Jews answer? Hashem created it. God created it. And he can give it to whom he wants. We didn't change it. God gave it to us with the potential to make it holy. And we just took that potential and we brought it into reality. We just brought out the potential that was already there. God gave us the power to take the mundane and to make it holy. So that is the essence. That's the difference of Israel. When we go to Israel and you come there and you go to the Western Wall, you go to the Kotel and you feel the holiness, it's because that land is really holier than other lands. It's not just that we feel comfortable because the Jewish people are there. So now the question becomes, why is this an introduction to the whole Torah? Does anyone have any thoughts of, you could unmute yourself and you could share, does anyone have any thoughts of why this would be an introduction to the entire Torah? The first pasuk, the first verse, the first Rashi, Rashi is just there to tell you the simple meaning. So the whole introduction to the whole entire Torah, to all 5 books, is, what is it? That God created it with the potential for us to bring holiness into it, and we're doing it, and that's what we're doing. Why do you think this is the introduction to the whole Torah? Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
It would appear that there were other people like Noah and other great people that occur in the book of Beraishis, but it took, Noah was supposedly perfect in his time. That doesn't mean he was the equivalent of Avram, but it really took Avraham to see the whole vision. So, I guess it's almost a way of saying that you have to see the vision.
You have to see the vision. I like that. That's great, and I'm going to elaborate, and I'm going to thank you so much, Sarah. If anyone has anything else they'd like to add,
on verse 2, it talks about the ruach, and I think that's the essence of the beginning. So they're introducing that ruach, that God hovered and infused it, like you said, making it holy.
Good. So we see this idea that it needs to be holiness. We need to see the whole picture. So this is really the purpose of the world. The message to the Jews when God is opening up and starting here is, you need to make a dwelling place, a home. And just as Kathy was saying, a home is somewhere where your essence could come out, where that ruach, where that spirit. Like, let's say I go to, let's say 2 girls go to, they're going to 2 friends. And I come to the first house. And in the first house, it's white, it's marble, everything is immaculate. The couches are white, the floor is, white marble. Everything is immaculate. There's nothing on the surfaces. It's perfectly clean. And one girl says to her friend, she says, I love it. It's so beautiful. It's so clean. And another girl says, I can't stand it. I want to just sit on the couch, put my feet up, relax, be myself. But no way. How could I possibly do that here? I'm going to make fingerprints on this. So I'm just sitting here stiff, can't move. And then they go to the next house and it's very cluttery. And there's a lot of, pictures all over it. It's darker colors and there's, a rug and a this and a that, and it's warm and then, one, she says, I love it. I hated that White House. Now and she sits on the couch and she flips up her, she puts her, her feet up and she's there. And the other girl says, I'm scared to even eat anything in here because, who knows it's so cluttery. Like, I don't want to touch anything. And we could go on and on. There's a third one where, it's in the middle, but a home is where I could be myself. For one person, immaculate. That's where I feel comfortable. For another person, warm, cluttery. For another person, somewhere in the middle. Where's God feel comfortable? It says, this is the purpose of the entire creation of the world. Beraishis, I am creating the world. Bara, created. I am creating the world. What is the purpose of the world? To make a home for Hashem in this world. Now, does Hashem like immaculate? Everyone put your thumbs up if you think he likes immaculate. Put your thumbs down if you think he likes cluttery. And put this if you think something else. Okay, cluttery. God doesn't, it's not about the immaculate or the cluttery. It's about holy. He likes a house that has a mezuzah, that has kosher food, that has kindness, where people love each other, where people speak refined, where people honor each other, where the husband and wife talk respectfully and get along with each other, where the children are respectful to their parents, right? Where there's Torah learning, where they give charity, etc., etc. That's what God likes. Okay, I see your question, Kathy. I'm going to get to it in a minute. I'm just going to finish this thought and then I'll get to that. So the purpose of the world is to make a home, a place where Hashem's essence could come out and he could feel comfortable. And this is done through us doing mitzvos, through bringing holiness. And that's how he starts off. I am telling you that the non-Jews are going to come and say, you stole it. You took mundane things. You took a regular land and you made it holy. You made it Israel. You took regular objects and you started doing mitzvahs and making everything hocus pocus holy. And they're going to give you a hard time with that. And they're going to say enough. Like in the time of Haman. What did Haman say? Just be like us. You want to go to synagogue and pray? Fine. But when you're just eating meals and partying, part with us. What do you have to eat different food for? What do you have to, not just be like us. They're going to give us trouble throughout the generations. God says, no, you are going to get unrefined things. You're going to get mundane things. You're going to have wood. You're going to have metal. You're going to have food items. Your job is to make it holy, to use it for mitzvah. You have a car. You're going to buy stuff, you're going to give someone a ride. You're going to pick up your children from school so they can be well taken care of. You're going to do good things with this. You have food, you're going to eat it. You're going to use that energy to learn Torah, to go visit someone who's not as fortunate as you and cheer them up. And we're going to perfect it. And yes, the non-Jews are going to always say to us, why are you changing it? Why are you stealing it? What are you doing all this for? Just live like us. And we're going to respond, no, this is God's will. God created all this stuff and he wants us to use it to serve Hashem, to conquer it. And so when they, criticize us, we say, no, we do mitzvahs proudly. We serve God with pride because this is the purpose of creation. We don't despair from the darkness around us because we know Hashem created that. Hashem created anything that's going on, and we say, we're not going to despair. Hashem created a lot of evil, a lot of bad things around us. Now, some things, the only way is you have to stay away from it. So, like if there's abuse, you don't say like, no, then someone needs to protect themselves and, stay away from that and take care of and do what they need to do. But you could still be respectful. So Kathy asked, what if somebody, how do you keep the mitzvah of kibbud of aim? How do you keep the mitzvah of honoring parents if they're abusive? So obviously one protects themselves, but they could still honor them. They could still call them. They could, depending at certain times, you have to completely cut off. For example, how do you elevate a pig? It's not kosher. We refrain. How do I elevate other foods that are kosher? By eating it and using that energy to serve God, by saying a blessing on it, by making sure it's kosher, etc. So it depends what it is. God made in this world, he hid himself. And he made a lot of things that look very real and exciting, but they're really darkness because they're hiding God. And our job is, we call it klipa, which means a covering. And when you have a cover, you can't really see what's inside of it. So like this glass is, you can't really see it, is see-through, so you could see what's in it. But this is opaque. So you don't know what's behind here. It might be red. It might be, right? You have no idea. So God hid himself that you can't really see. But he says, take off the cover. Look beyond that and you will see God. You'll see Hashem. And that's how we make a home for Hashem. So we can't despair when we see evil around us. We just have to, and sometimes it's very overwhelming. You say, how am I transforming this whole world? It's impossible. So I once heard about a little girl who had to do a science project on pollution. And she came and she made a little man-made, in her project, like a little ocean, a little river, whatever it was, a lake, I guess. She made a little lake and she poured in some red dye for pollution. And she wrote a whole thing that I should be allowed to do this because I live here. This is my dock. I own this part of the lake. And I'm just going to put a few red dots only in my part of the lake. And the rest of the lake, I'm not going to touch. So that's what she did. And then what happened? What do you think happened to the rest of the lake? Anybody could share?
Well, it spread out all over the place.
Exactly. It spread out and the whole lake turned red, even though she only put it in hers. So then what did she do? She took some bleach and whatever cleaning, and she cleaned it. And did it only clean her area? It ended up trickling and cleaning everywhere else. So we can't fix the world, but we can fix ourselves. And guess what? When we change our mundane to holy, we affect the whole world, just like that story. And the Rambam says, Maimonides says, we have to view the world as perfectly equal, a scale, and you do a mitzvah, you might be the one just to tip that scale. Okay, so now we are, we're going to look at creation a little bit. And sorry, I'm just trying to share screen, but I think did I lose? Do you see the share screen or did I? No. Sorry, I lost here. Just give me 1 second. Okay, let me see if I can get, I don't know how I lost, oh, here I am. Okay, sorry. Okay, got it. Sorry, I haven't used Zoom in a while. Okay, so I'm just going to share screen so we can see this. Okay, there we go. So we're just going to do the abridged version right here where it says, what God created. So here I have the spotlight. Okay, so on Sunday, God created the heaven, the earth, and the light. On Monday, the sky, the angels, and purgatory. Tuesday, trees, vegetation, and the Garden of Eden. Wednesday, the sun, the moon, and the stars. Thursday, the birds, the fish. The Leviathan is the fish that we're going to have when Mashiach comes. Friday, the beasts of the earth, the livestock, the reptiles, man and woman. So we're going to discuss a little bit of this and what's going on. So the first thing is, when it says on Sunday that God created the light, this light that he created was not the sun. Because as you saw, when was the sun created? Anybody see when the sun is created? I'll pull it up again. The sun was created on the 4th day, right? On Wednesday. So this light that was created on the first day over here, that we're talking about over here, this is a light that God actually took away and he hid it until it says he saved it for righteous tzaddikim, and he hid it until the time of Mashiach. So the question becomes, why would God create a light and then say, this is too strong, this is too powerful, so I'm going to save it for later? You think God didn't realize? He didn't know that this light would be too strong? Of course he did. So the reason why he did it is because he said, you have to start off knowing when you build a home, because that's our job here, we're building that home, remember, where God feels comfortable, where there's holiness. He says, when you build a home, what do you have to do? You first, yes, you have the blueprint, but before that, what do you picture in your mind? You picture the whole house complete with your beautiful floors, whether they're wood or they're marble, or with the chandelier, with the lighting, right? That's what you first picture. And then you go step by step. Let me buy the supplies. Let's say you want to make a beautiful dress for your daughter's wedding, right? You first picture the dress, and then you get the pattern and the seamstress, but you first have to have that vision. You said, I'm showing you the vision. This light, getting to Mashiach, getting to a perfect world where there's not going to be evil. That's your goal. Now I'm putting on the side because you got to work step by step. So what's very interesting is that each day of creation corresponds to 1,000 years in history. So there's 3 parts here. We have the attribute that Hashem used. So there's 7 basic attributes, and there are 7 days of creation. And then it says there are going to be 7 millenniums. We're in the 6th millennium now, because we're in 5. When you're in the 5,000s, we're in 5782. When you're in the 5,000s, like when you're 5 years old, you're in your 6th year. So we're in that 6th millennium now. So each day, God, it says that all of us have 7 basic attributes, and we'll go through them and we'll see what attribute God used and how that created what was created on that day of creation, and then how that sheds light and is similar to what happened in that millennium in the history. So that's what we're going to do. So the first day of creation, God used chesed. Chesed is kindness. It's pure giving without limitation. This is absolute unlimited benevolence. It's just bestowing kindness for the sake of kindness. It's ignoring the recipient. So it's kind of like if you give without any boundaries, like a child wants candy and, oh, sure, take everything. Maybe it's not so good for the child, right? Maybe they're going to get cavities. Maybe they're not going to be so healthy. So you have to, you have to think about that. So this was like Abraham. He was so kind. He invited everybody in. It didn't matter who you were. It's a wonderful trait. And this is when God just gave that light, that unlimited light, just giving with no end. And what happened in that millennium, if everyone could please mute themselves unless they have a question, that would be great. So what happened in the history? Everyone lived very long lives. This was the time of Adam. This was the time of Noah. And the fruits were big, and everything was in abundance. But it wasn't beneficial, because it's like that parent who's just giving candy. Oh yeah, take whatever you want. No boundaries. Don't go to sleep when you need to. Who cares? Stay up. And that's what happened. The Jews sinned this is the time of Noah, where they started to sin. And they started to, when you have no rules, it's chaos. Because they didn't have reminders, and God didn't set, the rules of what they have to do. So that's, so that's what happened. That's what happened. And then the second attribute is severity. So the way it works is there's 2 general attributes: chesed, kindness; Devorah, which is strength. And those are the 2 general, and all the other 7, come out of those 2. All the other 5, come out of those 2. So chesed is all about outward, giving outward. Devorah is inward. Okay, so Devorah is strength. When you think of strength, this is might, powerful. This is like judgment. When you judge, you've got to be strong. You've got to separate. You've got to look, well, this is maybe, even though he did this, maybe, maybe some of it was coming from a different place. You got to so it's the idea of separating and restraining and discipline. How am I disciplined? I want to go to the party, but you know what? I'm first going to clean my house before I go. I need to go to the party. I also have to some work, studying. I'm going to first study, then I'm going to, right? Discipline. I want to eat foods. I'm on a diet. I'm disciplined. I'm going to say yes to this. I'm going to say no to that. It's a lot of separating. Okay. Is that clear so far? So that's the idea of, separating. That was more Isaac. He was more inward. He wasn't inviting all the guests and going forward. He was more inward. And so what was created? God separated the waters. Okay. Hashem separated the waters and, created the skies and the waters. What happened? So that's separated. We can't just have water everywhere. We got to make a system. This is the rivers. This is the lakes. This is the heaven. We got to make it. This is land. We got to make it organized. What happened in those years of history? This is the famous Mabul, the famous Noah and the ark and the flood that happened in the world. And it says after that, a third of the world was flooded as a result of idol worship. And there was the Tower of Babylon where they tried to build a tower to go up and fight against God. So we have these stories where it's punishments. God is giving punishments as opposed to the first millennium where it was like, do what you want. Everyone can live long. Everything is good. Now it's more punishment. This is not okay. We got to make behavior. We got to cleanse the world. Okay, so we see that connection. Then on the third day, the third attribute is Tiferes. Tiferes is a perfect blend. You want to be kind and you want to be giving, but you sometimes got to be inward and disciplined and restrained. So this is like a blend of the two. This is beauty. This is harmony. This is, what makes the world endurable. It's just the mixture. It's compassion and it's truth. Truth. Okay, so it's beauty and truth. And what was created? All the beauty of the world, the trees, the flowers, right? What makes the world so beautiful? And what happened in that millennium in the creation? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were born, and they brought in the world truth, meaning. Also, Moses and Aaron were during that time. And the most famous, the giving of the Torah, because the Torah is what merges giving and kindness with discipline and rules. Yes, we have to be giving, but there's rules. Shabbat is at this time. We got to stick to that time. We can eat this, we can't eat that. We have to be kind, but we have to protect ourselves. So that perfect balance, the truth, the harmony is Torah. Torah is also harmony because we take the physical and we do a mitzvah and we make it spiritual, which is also harmonizing between that. So that's that perfect blend. Then we go to the fourth day, which is called Netzach. So remember, the way it goes is that you have a we have a chesed. I'm gonna just draw here for a minute, just so you can see. Okay, so let's just say this is chesed, and this is gevura, and now this is tiferes, which is, we said, like a combination of the two. Then we're going to have Netzach. Oh, I didn't. Netzach is going to be over here. right over here, it's like a mini version. Sorry, let me put that. It's a mini version of chesed. So it's on the giving side. And actually the way, okay, so that's going to be a mini version. And the next one is going to be a mini version right over here. Okay, so you've got your chesed, which is like the main one that everything stems from. You have your gvura over here. Okay, so you got the chesed, you got the gvura, you got Thurs, which is a perfect blend. Then you have netzach, which is similar to chesed, but smaller. And then we're going to go to hod. So we're on netzach over here. That's where we are now. And so netzach is like a mini version of the chesed. It's giving, but in a way that the world can handle it. It's victory, endurance, right? When you're victorious, you're going, you're out, you're more external, but you do it in a way that like, I'm successful. I had a successful business. And you allow the chesed to flow. You allow it to be, more successful. So that's what netzach is. So what was created on that day? The sun, the moon, the stars. Remember the first day, that light, what happened to that light? God had to take it away. It was too powerful. This light, this is what we live with. We have the sun, we have the moon, we have the stars. So it's like enduring. It's something that we could keep and live with and use. So what happened in the 4th millennium? We had our first Beis Hamikdash, our first temple. We had our second temple. We had all the prophets, which are like the stars, the luminaries. It says the first temple is like the sun. The second temple was like the moon because it was missing some of the stuff from the first temple. And we have the stars, which are illuminaries, and the world, which illuminate the world in a very positive way. So that is this enduring light. Then we go on to hod, which I said is a mini version of severity and gevura. And that is, again, it's like punishments and severity, but we can handle it. So that's like God made insects and birds and fish and wild animals. And actually says, I know we had the chart before that said that the animals were born, on the 6th day, but it says that this attribute continued until mid of the 6th day. So that's why it's going to be lumped together with this. And it says that, wild animals, insects, we have to be careful. They could be harmful. We have exterminators where, we have, we're not living in the wild, with all the animals, but we can handle it. It's controllable, It wasn't like the light that had to be taken out of this world. We could handle it. So what happened during these 1,500 years that hod spilled over into the 6th day, that we have the expulsions, the blood libels, the crusades, the wandering, the ghettos, all of this, but we survived. We're here, not like in the time of Noah, they were gone. We survived. We're here. Jews, we're so resilient. We come back, stronger. And then the 6th day is Yesod. So going back to our whiteboard here, after that, we have this idea of combining the netzach and the hod, which would be a mini version of Tiferes that we had over here. And this level, these are all emotions, that's why I put them as hearts. So this emotion that we have is mixing and blending the endurance, the netzach, but it's mixing it with this hod, which we said is, like splendor and silence, which I think I actually didn't say, I realize now, but we kind of skipped. But it's the mini gevura, where you're restraining, but it's more like being silent. It's not like as strong. which definitely has its place. So how do we combine these two? We have Yesod. That's where we are over here. We have the Yesod. What does the Yesod mean? Yesod means foundation. What's the foundation? If you have to pick one thing that's the foundation of connection. Yesod is bonding. So it blends. And as you saw in this diagram that I did, that it really contains all of them, because look over here, right? Because it's a mini version of this, and this is a mini version, you see how this goes? It's like holding everything in it. And that's the idea of bonding. That bonding, it's combining endurance and success with knowing when to be quiet, when to be inward. That's what bonding is. You give, you love somebody, but you know you have to hold back at certain times. You can't smother a child, right? You have to do it when you're teaching. You teach, but some things I'm not going to tell you, because if I tell you everything, it's going to be a mess, right? So it's the idea of bonding, could be between friends, between a husband and wife, between children, all these traits we can use in everything. And that's when God bonded. And what did he create in this bonding? Man. He created Adam and Chava. We are the foundation of the world. We are all about connection, connecting to God, connecting to each other, connecting man to Hashem. That's the purpose of the world. That's the foundation of the world. And what happened during that time period? It says that the Baal Shem Tov was born. And the Baal Shem Tov brought into the world. He went up to heaven and he said, Mashiach, when the final redemption, when is it going to come? And he was told, when you spread the wellsprings, when you spread your teachings, because he cared about every single Jew, and he cared about going into the inner dimensions of the Torah. So he's leading us into the Messianic era, into the redemption, into Mashiach, into Geula. And that is the foundation, because as we said in the beginning, that was our purpose. God showed us that light and said, I'm taking this away, but don't forget, this is your goal. So the Baal Shem Tov is like bringing us that last stretch to the goal. And then we finally have the seventh day, which is Malchus. Okay, so if we go back over here to our little diagram, that is a mini version of the Yesod, and it means kingship. Okay, so we're over here, which again contains, it basically takes everything, your connection, and Malchus is when you're able to share it with others, because Malchus is kingship. It says there could be no king without a nation. There could be no king without people. So kingship is all about creation, having another person. When you create, there's something besides you. Speaking, when I think, it's for myself. When I speak, it's including someone else. So it's all about this idea of revelation. And what was created on that day? Shabbos. And what is Shabbos? Shabbos is the idea of the culmination of creation. It's when Hashem is revealed. We try to separate from the world. We don't want to, we try not, we don't drive, we don't use we separate, and we go to shul, and we have longer meals to connect to God. And what happens in that millennium? That is Mashiach. And we know that we always light candles when it's still Friday. We bring in Shabbos. So we will bring in the Geula, we will bring in Mashiach already in the 6th millennium, which we're in now, because we always bring it in early. And that's what we're working on, which is transforming the world. So if anyone has any questions, our time is up. But so everyone, feel free to log off now. I don't like keeping people over. I'm used to teaching in a school where there's a bell. Second that bell rings, I'm done, no matter what's happening. But there was no bell here. But if anyone, so everyone is dismissed. But if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to stay on for another couple of minutes to take any questions.
Okay, thank you so much for the lecture. See you next time.
Okay, thank you for joining.
Yeah,
Thank you, Devorah, Leah. Bye. all.
My pleasure.
I have
Thank you for joining.
I have a question that came
Sure.
to mind now as you're
Yes.
talking about these things. So when Mashiach comes, are we still going to be lighting Shabbos candles?
As far as I know, all the mitzvot all the mitzvahs that we do now are going to continue when Mashiach comes. And we're going to know all the mitzvahs. We're going to know deeper secrets of Torah. We're going to be, much sharper and understand more. And we're not going to have the evil inclination to prevent us from doing the mitzvahs. And yes, we will, as far as I know, we're still going to, we're still going to do
Like
that.
candles.
Yes.
Okay.
Which could be a whole class in itself, about this, symbolism of the candles and ushering the Shabbos, but not for now.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions? Okay, so everyone have a great day and thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Bye.